morning, everyone, and welcome back to the second session of the second day. And this is on one of the important aspects of research. Review of related literature forms an integral part of research, and it serves a number of important purposes for the researcher. So friends, in this very session, I'm going to find an answer to number of questions which come to our mind why review of related literature needs to be studied. The very first question that we will try to find answer to is, are there drawbacks in the existing system of review of related literature? What is review of literature? How can you define this term, review of related literature? And what are the purposes that are served by review of related literature? So why is it essential to carry out review of related literature? Then if we have to carry out review of related literature, then what are the various sources from which the relevant literature can be identified, located, and then read through? What is the systematic process of carrying out review of related literature? Now, coming to the very first question, are there drawbacks in the existing system of review of related literature? Let me just put across to you three different theses which I tried to analyze and just provide you a glimpse of how review of related literature is normally presented in the thesis. The very first slide which you see, it is dealing with Ellis 1996, Andrews et al. 1996, Das 2004, and the literature continues for one of the theses. The second example I'm showing you with respect to one of the theses on mastery learning. And here again we find that while presenting the review of related literature, the researcher has included studies, Yadav 1984, Call 1986, Salim 1988, Mathur 1988, Arana 1988, and if you go further, it is Malini, Prasad 1988, and Monger 1989. And it continues with studies from various years. And if you look at any two studies, Yadav 1984, and it starts with studied the effect of mastery learning strategy on pupils' achievement in mathematics, self-concept, and attitude towards mathematics. After the experimental treatment, the group taught through master learning strategy exhibited significantly higher achievement in mathematics, evinced a more positive attitude towards mathematics, and showed improvement in self-concept than the control group. Now, if you look at another study, Monger 1989, examined the effects of mastery learning instructional strategy on student achievement and on student subject-related attitudes. And it is written, Bloom had predicted that mastery learning. And you see, when you try to compare Yadav 1984 with the Monger 1989, different set of information is included in the review of related literature. Go to another thesis which I picked up from chemistry, and here also you would find Mendes et al., and the study has been described. Another study again by Mendes et al. Then we have Sathis Kumar et al., a study which was carried out. Now my question to the audience is, on the basis of what you have seen, on the basis of what research you have carried out, and normally when you publish paper, you take up review of related literature. So what is the normal practice of including review of related literature in any thesis or in any paper which you publish? So over to one of the centers, maybe we start with Gandhi Academy. Okay, Gandhi Engineering College. Can we get the response? What are the drawbacks which you find in the review of related literature?
Hello.
Ji, go ahead. Ji, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, leave the pleasantry. Please go ahead with the reply.
Madam, that drawbacks regarding that literature review, when we go for specify the problem, depend upon the concept, and on that we need to be particular, identify the requirements, and as per the requirements, we need to be description on that part, and
I'm asking about what is the drawback, the way the review of related
ambiguity regarding requirement or overlapping of some concepts.
Okay, so you mean to say sometime irrelevant
Data
of related literature is included in the review. Thank you so much. Any other response from Gandhi Engineering College? Quickly.
Regarding that misconception on concepts, means if that should be, we can say ambiguity on requirement.
Okay. So when the review is included, sometimes there ambiguity in the reproduction of the study which has been carried out. Thank you so much. Over to City Group of Institutions, Jalandhar. City Group of Institutions. Any one or two major drawbacks which you come across? Go ahead. City Group of Institutions, we are not getting your audio, sir.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Hanji, now you are audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am. After completion of this session, ma'am, we do have written a few questions. We'll just clarify the questions and then we'll get to know about literature more. Thank you. After the session, they have written the question.
1 minute. My question is, when you write paper for any journal, you go undertake review of related literature. As a part of your ME dissertation, you have taken review of related literature. You might have analyzed review of related literature carried out by different people. So my question to the audience is, what are some of the common drawbacks which you observe in the way the review of related literature is carried out by the researchers?
Yeah, ma'am. First drawback that I have noticed is mostly the researches mentioned in the literature review is outdated. It is some more outdated.
Okay. So one of the points which you have raised is that when a review is carried out, some of the research which is outdated is presented in the review. Any other, sir?
And secondly, ma'am, there is most of the time it seems to be appearance of ambiguity in the mentioned literature review.
Okay. So ambiguity has been raised by two of the participants. Thank you very much. Over to Chaudhary Devilal University. Over to Chaudhary Devilal University. Any drawback?
Chaudhary Devilal.
take much time. Give me a response if you have. Chaudhary Pepilal Group of Institutions or the university, if you have an answer to the question, please go ahead.
Like from institutions, can I ask?
8 minutes. I think Kite will wait. Let me get a reply from Chaudhary Pepilal. No answers? Okay, over to Krishna Institute of Engineering and Technology.
Yes, ma'am, the problem we face is that it doesn't discriminate between the relevant and irrelevant material.
It doesn't
Discriminate between
repeat.
it don't discriminate between the relevant and irrelevant material.
Okay, okay. So does not discriminate between relevant and irrelevant material. So irrespective of the relevance of the studies, person goes on including the review of related. Any other, ma'am? Any other drawback observed?
Yes, lack of clear organizational structure.
Okay. Lack of clear organizational structure. Fine. I'll take up one by one these points. Thank you so much. Over to another college. Okay, go ahead. RTU, MS University, Baroda. Can we have reply from your center?
Students represent the review as it is without analyzing it in context of their research.
Thank you so much. So, lack of analysis and evaluation of the study which is included, it is presented as such as taken from the paper or as taken from the thesis of another person. Thank you so much. Any other drawback, ma'am?
Many times the conclusion is not in context of the problem evaluated. It is just a representation of the entire paper.
Okay.
It does not conclude analytically with the papers.
So you want
It is
to
just the abstract of the. It is just the abstract.
abstract.
The presentation.
Fine. So complete paper is not read. Is not read. Only abstract is included in the paper. Abstract included. Thank you so much. Over to Rajasthan Technical University. RTU. Quickly. We don't have so much time. RTU. What number is? They don't have a camera still? Huh? Okay. Any answer, RTU? Any other college? Kodia Group of Institutions, Sangol. Can I get a reply? Please go ahead. Or maybe in the meantime, later participants, sir, if you have any drawback in mind.
Repetition.
Okay. Repetition. What repetition? किस चीज की?
Particular topics. Other specify topics.
Okay.
Related to.
Okay. Repetition of the topic. Okay. Kodia Group of Institutions. Is there no participant? There is no participant? What do you mean by? Oh, okay. Any other institution which is left? कोई तो रह गया थोड़े को लिस्ट हैगी कौन है Okay, friends, the drawbacks which you have enlisted, let me just give you a brief about what are the major drawbacks which are experienced by any one of us as evaluator of master's dissertation or PhD evaluation. First thing which you observe in majority of the cases is that review is presented in a chronological order, starting with 75, 79, 84, 86, 91, 95, and so on. Or it starts in the ascending order or a descending order. Now the trend is the most latest studies are included and then you follow. But is this the only way of presenting the review of related literature? This question needs to be answered. Because when you are presenting it in chronological order, that indicates that you have collected number of studies and you have taken the abstract from the paper and you are just including the abstract of the paper in your review of related literature. It does not involve any study, it doesn't involve any analysis, or it doesn't involve synthesis of the information which is available in the various papers which you have reviewed or various articles which you have reviewed. Another important drawback which we come across is gaps in review. When I say gaps in review, sometimes it happens that you come across a study in 1984 and suddenly there is a jump from 84 to 2004, as if for the past 20 years there has been no study in the area. So these gaps lead to wrong conclusions drawn on the part of the researcher. So gaps in review is a major drawback that exists because many people would include studies which are easily available to them. And even if the paper has the references, the researcher doesn't go to the primary source by reading the papers which have been referred by the one researcher or the other. Inability of researcher to classify the studies. Now, one of my colleagues said that there is no logical organizational structure that is being provided in the review of related literature. What happens that, say, for example, I have taken up a study on, say, reinforced concrete. Now, when I say civil engineering and I talk about reinforced concrete, there may be different ways of reinforcing the concrete. You can use glass, you can use steel, you can use fiber to reinforce the concrete. No, but when I am presenting the review of related literature, I have a chronological review, irrespective of the fact that 10 studies used glass reinforced concrete, the other 10 used steel reinforced concrete. And there were 5 studies where the comparison between glass reinforced and steel reinforced concrete has been made. Now, if as a researcher, I do not collate the information collected from various sources, I cannot reach or draw the conclusions appropriate for the study. So the one thing, the variables which have been taken up in the study, you can use the variable for classifying the review of related literature. Then you can also use the context in which the study has been carried out. Primarily when we talk about the management, then we can have studies which have been taken up in the educational sector. There are studies which have been taken up in the industry sector, and maybe within the industry and other organization, you have studies in the banking sector, you have studies in the retail sector, and so on. Can, as a researcher, I classify the studies under the different context in which the study has been carried out? That is another way of classifying. But people fail to do this kind of analysis because it requires time, energy, and at least a study of the review which you have collected. Another could be context in the form of whether a study has been carried out in the Indian context or it has been carried out in the US context, or it has been carried out in Germany or Australia. So one needs to, because when I talk about generalization, the more the similarity between the context, the greater would be the generalization. And if that generalization is missing, I'm not able to interpret my results which I obtain at the end of my research study. Another one is that incomplete information. Now, I just read two studies in the previous slide, and I said when the person included Yadav 1984 with respect to mastery learning, he is talking about what was the purpose of the study. That studied the effect of mastery learning strategy on pupil achievement, self-concept and attitude. And then the person is saying after the experimental treatment, group taught, he just comes to the finding of the study. Nowhere it is written on which sample the study was conducted. What was the duration of the treatment that was provided? Whether the treatment, what were the major components of the treatment which was given to the experimental group. Now, when I go to Monger at the end of the slide, if you can see, examine the effects of mastery learning instructional strategy on student achievement and on student subject related attitudes. Now, these two studies have some commonality. The achievement has been studied, the attitude towards mathematics has been studied, but nowhere the person has included similar information while presenting the review of related literature. And the person has not collated the information that these two persons found a significant effect on achievement, or whether there was a significant change in the attitude of the students towards mathematics who were taught through mastery learning approaches. So first thing we come across is that information which is included under different studies that varies, that differ from each other. And once you include different information, sometimes it is complete, sometimes it is incomplete. And it is very difficult for the researcher to collate the information, and the students sometimes are unable to draw conclusions on the basis of the review of related literature. Then comes in some of the theses, now it is not in majority of the theses, but some of the theses we came across that review of related literature was presented in the present tense. Now again, you are going against the guidelines how to include the review of related literature. It is always in the past tense, because you are dealing with what has already been done in the field or in the subject, or etc. So these I have already dealt with, that once there is in different information, incomplete information, no classification of studies, many a times the review of related literature has no definite conclusions arrived at the end of the chapter, which is included in the thesis or the dissertation by the student. And I was looking at the Rand's Corporation, which has given the criteria for high quality research. And one of the criteria they have enlisted is that the study should demonstrate understanding of related studies. Now, what does it mean when they say one of the criteria for high quality research is understanding of related studies? That means whatever study is being undertaken by a researcher, the base, the foundation is laid by the earlier research. So the present study is based upon the existing body of research. It must try to build up the relationship between the existing study and the previous studies. Once you are able to establish the relationship, you are actually contributing to the development of the concepts, development of the relationships, and you are contributing to the disciplinary knowledge. Once you don't build the association, the relationship, your contribution to advancement of knowledge is negligible. Then understanding of past research, that means it helps you in formulation of the problem. Because once you look at what has already been studied, whether it was an effect study, whether it was an impact study, many people confuse between an impact and an effect. Effect is immediate, impact is long term. So when we are writing, formulating a problem, what are the variables which have been selected? And whether it is an experimental study, it starts with effect. If it's a descriptive study, it simply starts with these analysis of this. So whatever is existing, I'm trying to analyze with respect to the strengths and weaknesses and so on. So one needs to, first, it helps in formulation of a problem. And then whatever the findings of the study, if you have understood the previous research, the interpretation of the findings of the study, it becomes very, very easy, and it becomes very, very logical that you arrive at certain definite conclusions on the basis of the findings of the study. And then when we say understanding, the review also should help you in coming to the conclusion whether the findings of the present study are in agreement with the previous findings, or is there a contradiction that emerges. Now, if there is a contradiction, the review of related literature helps you in finding out the reasons why there is contradiction in the finding of the study. What is it that is different with respect to the context or the treatment or the variable or the controls which have been exercised in the study? So where was a difference that different results have been obtained? So this is what is required of a high quality research, and thus it becomes essential and imperative for all of us as researchers to undertake review of related literature in a very systematic, logical manner. And when I say, how do we define review of related literature? A very simple definition is shown to you on the slide. If you read it, it is systematic. Now, when we say it is systematic, that means it follows certain logical steps. And the process starts with a question, a research question, which is there in the mind of the researcher. Or maybe I start with a very open-ended question, what has already been done in the field of IC engine? So I'm looking at a very broad perspective, and I'm trying to find out what all research has been carried out in the field of IC engines. Explicit. It's very clearly spelled out. Reproducible. That means when you are reviewing the literature, you are actually trying to summarize the information which is contained in the research article or the dissertation or the PhD thesis which have been submitted, and you are trying to reproduce some of the important aspects of that. Maybe you are dealing with objectives, You are dealing with the context, you are dealing with the sample, you are dealing with the methodology, and you are dealing with the findings, and you are also trying to deal with the delimitations of the study and the further suggestions for research in the area. So it is systematic, it's clearly spelled out, explicit, and it is reproducible method for identifying. So now you look at identifying. That means the very first step for the researcher is to locate the relevant information, to find out where that source of information is, where the relevant information is available. And very rightly, one of our colleagues said, the students now, the culture is cut, copy, and paste. And you have an abstract given, they simply copy it and place it in the abstract. But review of related literature is not simply picking up the things and reproducing those things. It involves critical examination of the research which has been carried out. And you are trying to have a criteria in mind. Maybe you are judging its relevance. You are judging the appropriateness of the variables that have been included in the study. You are also trying to evaluate that whether the methodology which has been used by the researcher was appropriate to the design of the study and so on. And at the same time, whether the interpretation of the results which have been there in that particular study, whether the person has drawn logical conclusions out of that or not. So it is not simple picking up the material and putting in the review of related literature, but it involves critical analysis and examination of the studies which are available. And third thing, synthesizing the existing body of knowledge. Now, say for example, I just took an example of civil engineering, that you are trying to compare the strength of reinforced concrete. One glass reinforced, another steel reinforced. Now, it is very clear that when you talk about the strength of material, then you are trying to compare the strength of glass reinforced and steel reinforced concrete. So you are able to collate the information for 10 studies which have included glass reinforced and steel reinforced concrete, and you are trying to draw conclusion out of the 10 study whether majority of these studies say that glass reinforced concrete, it had more or significantly more strength or higher strength than the steel reinforced. So you need to collate the information when you are including in the review of related literature. So in brief, you can say that review of literature involves identification, location, analysis of the document containing information related to the research problem. So whatever problem you have, or if you do it prior to the study, it is more broad. But once the problem has been formulated, you are pinpointing to the research which is related to your work, which is concerning the same variable which you have included in the study. Now we come on to what are some of the purposes served by review of related literature. Now let's quickly go back to the institutions and try to come out with the purposes that are served by the review of related literature. So over to City Group of Institutions. City Group of Institutions. So any 2 or 3 purposes served by review of related literature. Can we listen to another participant? Yes, Go ahead. Sir, audio clear नहीं है आपकी.
Hello.
हाँ जी, now it's okay, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ma'am, according to me, the main purpose of literature review is to connect the researcher to the prior researches or the findings in that field, first of all. And second one is the literature review gives you the right direction in which the research should be carried out, as literature review tells us about various gaps which we can find while performing our research.
Thank you so much. Over to Gandhi Engineering College quickly. Gandhi Engineering College.
Hello.
Ji, please go ahead.
Ma'am, regarding purpose of a literature review, we need to idea about the theoretical framework, what we consider for our topic or subject area, or we can go for find some terminology, terms, definitions, or we go for find out what case studies we are planning for do it regarding that research part. Or we can means what we say like what research to be carried out means that methodology part. All these to be require of when we go for purpose of research.
Thank you
Literature
very
review.
much. Thank you very much. Over to Chaudhary Devilal University. Are you there? Ji, sir. Any response to the question? Sir, audio clear नहीं है. आप external mic use कर रहे हैं, which is not okay. Okay, move on to Krishna Institute. Guys, can we have a reply from your side? Krishna Institute.
Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, it also provides an idea, theories which are currently published related to the topic. Okay, and the is also for the topic you are doing research.
Okay.
And it also provides a theoretical framework.
Okay, it provides theoretical framework and also provides an idea about the current practices or current theoretical formulas. Thank you very much. Over to Kodia Institute. Kodia Group of Institutions. ये आप छत की तरफ कैमरा क्यों करके बैठे हैं जी? प्लीज रिस्पॉन्ड. कोडिया ग्रुप और राजस्थान टेक्निकल यूनिवर्सिटी. RTU. They're not there. What else? MS University. मैम आपका माइक बंद है. माइक ऑन कर लीजिए काइंडली. स्विच ऑन. हाँ जी.
Good morning, ma'am.
Please go ahead.
Literature review is a continuous process, whether you are a researcher or not, because it helps us to find the knowledge gap about the subjects.
Okay. So, knowledge about the subject or knowledge about the subject taken. So thank you very much. Any other reply you want to give? Okay, I think when it comes to the review of related literature, as all of you have said, it serves many important purposes. And if I just compile what Gay et al. Has given, it says what has been done in the field. So what research has been carried out in the field which you have selected, develop a logical framework. And you have already given me that there is a theoretical framework to any research study. So what are the concepts? What is the relationship among the various concepts, or what theories are available in a particular subject? That theoretical framework is clearly available in the various pieces of research which are at your disposal. And you are able to then develop new associations in that theoretical framework. It also rightly said that it gives direction to the researcher with respect to methodology, with respect to the objectives of the study, maybe with respect to the clarification, the variables which need to be included. It also helps you in formulating the hypothesis. Based upon the findings of the previous studies, you are able to formulate the hypothesis that is a tentative solution to the problem, which needs to be verified. And it also facilitates interpretation of the results. And if I look at another author, the Johnson and Christensen, you will see similar things appear as far as the purposes served by review of related literature is concerned. So what has been done in the past, need for this study. If there is a gap that exists, there is a need to take up another study in the area. But if all the previous researches, they come to the conclusion, maybe there is no need to take up further research in that area, then it also helps you in building the need or justification for taking up the study, and it helps you in refining your problem statement, changing, modifying your variables, and it helps you in specifying the objectives and formulating the questions. And here, it also helps you in interpretation of results and writing proposals and so on. In nutshell, I would say that as a researcher, when I do review of related literature, it helps me in answering all these questions which are actually bothering a researcher at the initial stage. Has the problem been researched earlier or not? Many times we label exploratory study. That itself clearly speaks of that hardly studies are available in this area. That's why I'm going to label it as exploratory. What is the need for the study? Can I give the justification, the study I'm taking up, whether the findings have been inconclusive, whether the findings have been contradictory, whether there are very few studies in different contexts which are available, there is a need to take up that kind of a study. What variables have been studied? Which independent variables have been included in previous researches? What have been the dependent variables? And what are some of the control variables that have been used in various types of researches? And when you do this kind of analysis, then it helps you to identifying, if you really want to see the effect of one variable on the other, what are the other variables which can actually affect the dependent variable? So there is a need to control that dependent, that other variable. Then research objective, what were the research objective, what design, and what context and on what sample the study has been conducted, and what measuring tools have been used, what were the findings of the study, and were the findings conclusive or contradictory? Do findings of the study contradict and support your finding? So name any part of research. Each part of research is supported by the previous research which has been carried out in the field. So all these, bigger doesn't mean better. That means once you go for, say you start studying a particular area from 60 onwards till 2017, all the 47 years the study has been taken up, that doesn't mean it is going to be better, because it is very difficult for the researcher first to collate all the information. And over the past 47 years or 57 years, the advancement in knowledge has been such that the earlier studies may not remain relevant in today's context. So one cannot simply say that bigger the review, the better it is. That means a researcher needs to delimit the review of related literature. Maybe once you qualify that you are trying to include studies for the past 20 years only, that is good enough. So a researcher taking up a study in 2017 is taking up study starting with 97. So wherever you think the field has been heavily researched, delimit it. Where you think there are a meager number of studies available, you can include studies from 60 onwards to 2017, right? And now let's quickly look at the process that needs to be followed for carrying out the research. The very first step in review of related literature is selecting a research question. Now, for example, we started with, the question was, is the glass reinforced concrete having more strength in comparison to the fiber reinforced concrete? This is the question. Now here, once you have a question in mind, you need to select the databases, and that you will choose what are the various sources of information, which I'll come little later. There are a number of sources of information which can be classified into primary sources of information, secondary sources of information, and preliminary sources of information. And once you have decided what databases you are going to tap or use or check, you also try to identify the search terms. Now the question which I have taken, 3 important terms appear in that: glass reinforced, fiber reinforced concrete, and the third important aspect is strength of reinforced concrete. So I just try to use these 3 terms when I'm going for search of the material, and then I apply practical screening criteria. Now when I say practical screening criteria, I mean to say whether in which context it has been used, where it has been used, what control variables have been used, how much has been the reinforcement. That has to be seen while we are trying to look to the material. And apply methodological screening criteria. Methodology. Am I only concerned with experimental studies? Am I concerned with ex post facto studies? Am I looking at only the correlational studies? Am I looking at where a randomized sample was taken? Or am I looking at where a case study was done? Am I looking at where the non-probability sample were also used for the study, or intact groups were used in the study? And then I need to carry out the review and synthesize. Now look at that when you are identifying keywords. Say for example, I just show you one file, which is Word file, but it gives you a glimpse of the problems which have been taken up. And what is the visibility? I don't know. Can I? कैसे करोगे? आ जाओ. 105. ओए, ऐसे कर रही सी मैं. ऐ कर रही. ये चल नहीं रहा. हो गया? थोड़ा जो और कर दो. Yeah. I don't know whether it is readable to you. Now it may be readable. Now just have a look at the study which is included here. that we are take ये तो कुछ हो रहा है, वो कुछ हो रहा है भाई, study ये कुछ हो रहा है. Now let's go to, this is management. Now say I'm taking up this study where my ये blink कर रहा है, क्या बोलते हैं इसको, cursor is blinking. Management of payment and settlement systems in India, critical review and challenges. Now here, when you look at the problem, three terms appear. Management is one. Which system? Payment system and settlement system. Or against the management, you can also include critical evaluation of, which you can include while you are reviewing the literature. Now let me take up few studies here. ये क्या हुआ? क्या नहीं रहा भैया? I think something has gone wrong and we're not getting, yeah. Here you can look at, here use of biodiesel and hydrogen as a fuel in CI engine. Now when you look at these, the three terms which are important is biodiesel, hydrogen and CI engine. The search terms are very clear from the title or the problem statement which you have taken up. Go to another one where you are looking at study of flow characterization in light duty engine lubrication pumping system. Now here, flow characteristics, light duty engine lubrication pumping system. So these are the terms which are important. Let me just take up another one. Here you see that we are talking about development of methodology for balancing multi-cylinder inline diesel engines. Now, when you say development, balancing of multi-cylinder inline diesel engine is one, balancing is another, and development may be the third one. So the terms are very, very specific, which can be used for searching the databases which are available. Let me just take up one more example where you have taken our flexural behavior of reinforced concrete beams with confinement of concrete in compression zone using high volume fly ash concrete. Now here, when you're looking at, it is flexural behavior of what? Of reinforced concrete beams. And then you look at zone using high volume fly ash. So this has been used as reinforcement. So when you are looking at the problem statement, try to identify the key terms which can be used for searching the engine or searching the databases. And here, broadening and narrowing the keyword, that is very, very important. Oi, isko kya karoon? Now here you can have a look at that when we are talking about broadening and narrowing keyword searches, three important Boolean operations can be used. And when you use and, that means you are narrowing down the research. Two words should appear in the statement. Then it narrows down. When you say or, that means if I'm saying organization or industry, I'm broadening my database. It will include all studies which have a component of organization or industry. Not, when I say not, I say education setup, not industry. So it will exclude all the studies which have been taken up in the industrial sector and retain all the studies which are taken up in the education setup. So you can use these criteria either to broaden your search or to narrow down your search. And sources of information, all of us are familiar with. We look to dictionaries, go to thesaurus, indexes, encyclopedia, books, abstracts, research reports, and so on. Now, all these sources of information can be classified into three. These three categorizations are preliminary sources, primary and secondary sources. So three different categories can be there. May I know from the audience what is included in preliminary source of information? Anybody who would like to respond to? Koi ek kar do. Hello.
Hello.
Hanji.
Madam, preliminary sources, we keep that requirements regarding that means data.
No, I would ask, give me an example of a preliminary source of information. Which is the preliminary source of information? Which is the primary source of information? And which one is the secondary source of information? Anji, any other member would like to respond to? अच्छा मुझे ये बताओ, I have on the top of it I have written dictionary. Whether dictionary is a primary source, secondary source, or a preliminary source. Hanji.
Yes, ma'am.
Which one is this?
My group of institutions, ma'am. Dictionary is a preliminary source.
Fine. So when you say dictionary is a preliminary source, that means you are simply trying to get information regarding the meaning of, because dictionary only gives you the meaning of a term. Likewise, when we say thesaurus, it only gives you the synonyms of a particular word, where you can broaden your search by putting, or narrow down your search, and when you use word and, you narrow down your search. Or when we talk about the indexes, they are referred to as the preliminary source, which only enlist the research which has been carried out and where it has been published. So when you go to the index, you are able to locate a source which needs to be tapped for the article which has published in a journal, maybe in 2015, 16 or 17. So that becomes a preliminary source of information.
That means, ma'am, ki bibliography is also.
Yeah. So when you search the bibliography, it's a preliminary. Which are the papers which have been published and used by a researcher, and then you go to the primary source of information. So which one is the primary source of information?
Madam, primary source of information should be like getting photographs, drawings, or maybe some records of information.
So in case of research, the primary source of information is which is produced by the researcher himself. Say for example, I am using a journal article which I have contributed. I'm talking about a dissertation. I'm talking about a thesis, or I'm writing a conceptual paper in one of the journals and so on. Or as an author, I have written a book which is written by me as an individual, is a primary source of information. secondary source of information is, say for example, you read an article which may be research or which may be conceptual, and it is citing research which has been carried out. It is quoting people who have worked in the area. And I now go to the reference section of that. Then I locate where the original source of information is available. I go to that, that becomes the primary source. Otherwise, this becomes the secondary source of information. So when we look at one of the theses and we go to the reference section, we find that number of articles have been quoted, referred by the author, and then we go to the primary source of information. And the procedure is, we start from preliminary sources, go to secondary sources, and then we go to the primary source of information. Because preliminary source gives you little information. Secondary source helps you identifying, locating the primary source of information. So once you are sure it is going to be related to what you are doing, you go to the primary source, read through, and then collate the information. So even when we are talking about secondary sources, your handbooks, encyclopedia, they also become the secondary sources of information, because they are giving you, say, encyclopedia, the overall development of a particular concept over the years. And it shows you the current practices. And it also highlights who are the people who are actually at the helm of affairs, that is, who have contributed to that field. वो सारे उसमें combined है. It's a summary of the work which has been done in that field. So you can first look at encyclopedia, then go to the main source. Then here you can do identifying the sources. आज आपके पास there are abundance of sources of information. You have electronic databases which are available, and you can easily access those databases. And I would say these are some which I have enlisted. The search engines, you have Google, Excite, Hotpot, Yahoo, Web Crawler, Dogpile, Mama, and Roosh. And here you have educational sites which can be tapped. Let me not go into details of all this, but we are all referring to certain sites. And there are subject indexes also which are available. Subject directories are available. Subject search engines are available. And here, there are a lot of dictionaries nowadays. You have a medical dictionary, you have a science dictionary, you have an electronics dictionary. All these are coming and flooded the market. You have, say, online libraries. Say Wiley has one which can be accessed by the people who have registered on the site. You have IEEE Explorer, where digital library of various engineering and technology journals are available. You have Science Direct, which gives you abundance of information about the various areas of research in engineering, technology, and science also. And you have directory of open access journals. And this particular site gives you an idea of 9,412 journals. And these are their article level, 6,582. You can go to the article and see it. 128 countries at present are able to contribute and access. आप देख लीजिए कितना भाई 23,78,629 articles are available. So a lot of data is available these days. Then you have on the website annual reviews which are available. So you can check these annual reviews also, which are published by many of the colleges or the publishing sites. You have a lot of journals which are coming up, national level, international. So the journal gives you the current research which is being carried out in any field. Then you have all these professional associations, and professional associations, they conduct conferences, and those conference proceedings are also available on their websites. Then you have Google Devta, which is referred to as Google Devta. So you have large repertoire of articles which is available. So if you put .pdf, the complete article which is available on PDF format, that is available to you. Then some of the government sites, because whenever we take a study, the policy of the government, that need also to be linked up. So you have Niti Ayog, which is their Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, and so on. All India Council for Technical Education, MHRD site, wherever you have databases with respect to technical education, that can be linked if it is relevant to the study. Then NBA site is available. You have all these. Then this is, I would like to, I don't know, many of you might be accessing this site. This is Shodh Ganga inflibnet.ac.in. So whatever research has been carried out in the country in different fields, चाहे वो आर्ट्स है, ह्यूमैनिटीज है, सोशल साइंसेज है, साइंस है, इंजीनियरिंग एंड टेक्नोलॉजी है, वेरियस यूनिवर्सिटीज इन द कंट्री, उसकी क्लासिफिकेशन भी है. The databases are available otherwise also. And the whole thesis of an individual is available on shodhganga.inflibnet.ac.in. And whatever references I was trying to give you, those were from Shodh Ganga. And you can look at that database, which is enormous, and you can have a review of related literature from whatever work has been carried out. Now, once you have identified the source of information, go to the primary article. Then the very first step in systematic review is read the abstract. Abstract पढ़ लोगे ना, you can make out whether this research is going to be relevant to you or irrelevant, whether it has some worth or not. So read the article abstract very carefully and make a decision whether to continue with the reading of the article or just leave it out. The second thing you can do is scan through the article. आपने abstract पढ़ लिया, अब read the very first few important words in that. Scan whether the term which you are looking for is available in the article. Just scan through. Once you have scanned the article, skim through the article. Skim means उसका gist निकालना है आपको. So read the few opening lines of introduction, the methodology, the findings, and so on. And then you try to, जब आप उसका abstract, and before you start jotting down your ideas on a piece of paper or on the computer, try to have 4 or 5 questions in your mind. मैंने क्या देखना है? Objective of the study, the context in which the study was conducted, the methodology which has been used, major findings of the study, and the further suggestions for research. So मैंने ये 6 क्वेश्चन अपने माइंड में रख लिए. Every study which I am going through, I'll try to answer these 6 questions when I am preparing a brief about each study which I'm trying to include in my review of related literature. And once you are writing, either in computer or otherwise, do the coding on that study, whether it dealt with, say, we took up payment and resettlement systems. Now, whether the study dealt with payment systems, whether the study dealt with settlement systems. So when it dealt with payment system, I give coding PS on the top of the study, PS, payment system. When it came to resettlement system, I give a coding RS, resettlement system. And there is third study, which is a combination of payment as well as resettlement. So I say PS plus RS. I can code this. One classification may be simple on the basis of the variable which has been included in the study. Another coding can be on the basis of the findings of the study. So we took up an example of reinforced concrete. So where the glass GRC, I say glass reinforced concrete, I put a GRC. And for steel reinforced, I say SRC. I say on the top of the study, I write GRC greater than SRC. There may be 10 studies which say steel reinforced concrete has greater strength than the glass. There I put SRC greater than GRC. So where no difference is found, I say ND, no difference. Or I put insignificant, INCSIG. So I coin my own criteria of coding the various studies which I have collated, which I have gathered, and then I put coding on those studies. The benefit of coding is that you can now club all the studies which have only studied payment system. You can club all the studies which have resettlement system, or you can club where both the systems have been studied, and you can draw the conclusions easily. So this is how one should actually go about a very systematically to the review of related literature. The question comes, when I'm preparing a review, wherever there is a significant statement, I would like to reproduce that statement. Copy as such, put it in inverted commas, and use the reference. That is the right way of doing it. And in nutshell, when we are preparing and summarizing the RORL, very important, it has to be consistent. That means all 6 questions, they are being answered by all the studies. Consistent. So you can collate the information later on. It has to be clear. Clear means it should convey the intended meaning. And complete. मैं अभी तो problem नहीं है because we have digital content available. But when I did my research at that time, we had to look into the journals. We have to go to the library, sit for 8 hours. अगर कहीं पे incomplete रह जाता था, it was a hell to locate the same information from the dissertation abstracts or the journals or the books. So one has to be very careful while recording that it has to be very complete information which will be used in your review. So don't leave anything which is important in that. And importantly, it has to be correct. So whatever you are trying to jot down, it has to be the same as given by the author of that. आपकी जो interpretation है, that has to be in tune with the connotation attached by the author of that paper. And here, reference जो आज आप question comes in, when you are reviewing, you are also trying to prepare your reference material or the bibliography. Two things. Now, let me ask the audience, how do you differentiate between the two? References क्या है और bibliography क्या है? हाँ जी. एक सेंटर को बता दीजिए. We normally use these two terms, references and bibliography. So what is the distinction between the two? Anyone? Hanji. City group of institution, any reply to this?
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Ma'am, bibliography is a combination of the various websites, then the references and the books we have read out. And references just all the research papers or the thesis we have studied for the review purpose.
Any other? Thank you so much.
बिब्लियोग्राफी को किया है दूसरे से.
Okay, any other reply from any other center?
Hello.
Hanji.
Ma'am, the bibliography should be any whatever the resource we have used for writing our concept, research concept. Those lists should be we include in a bibliography.
Okay. References.
Reference means for which object to be considered for our concept to write.
Thank you very much, sir. References. Whatever you have referred in your text, that goes as a reference. Anything which you have referred to but not included, all that goes to the bibliography. There's the simple difference between the two. And I would say bibliography is any list of references at the end of text, whether cited or not. But references are the ones which have been cited in the text. And आजकल what we need to think of कि आप books का, I will not go into how do you prepare your references and bibliography, but I would simply say that you have now the softwares which are available, which help you in writing references in the proper sequence. When it goes to the science, engineering, and technology, normally people are adopting IEEE pattern of writing the reference or the bibliography. So if as a social science person, education, management, social sciences, political science, then we refer to American Psychological Association, APA, and the 6th guideline which have come, we refer to those. And even if when you are quoting your reference, even if there are 6 authors for a particular research, all the 6 names will first appear in the first time the reference is made, followed by in bracket the year. And when you are using the same reference again, then you can use Johnson et al. 2016. First time all the 6 authors will be given. Earlier, wherever there were more than 3 authors, we used to use Johnson et al. Now this is the difference which has come up, and as far as the references are concerned. But I need not go into. I would simply say that this is where the IEEE pattern of giving references, you have a name of a person, because in the text you are quoting number 1, number 2, number 3. So in social sciences, normally the references are arranged in alphabetical order, but in sciences, it is primarily the reference number. Whichever reference appears first in the text, that comes as a reference number 1. So you can say Mehmet Bahar, 2009, relationship between pupils' learning style and their performance. Angela Cutolo and Regina Rockford, 2007, H. Zakaria, Razak, and Muhammad. So you see here, the first name comes first and the second names come later. But in social sciences, the second name comes first and the first name comes later. So these are the differences which are to be taken into account. At the end, I would only say that try to motivate the students to write review in their own words rather than copying it, the abstract from the given research article or the dissertation, and then collate the information. They should go in for integrative review of related literature rather than writing chronological review of related literature, and ask the students to draw conclusions at the end of the chapter. That is normally a second chapter review of related literature. So at the end, they should clearly draw the conclusion on the basis of the previous research which has been carried out, and the hypothesis formulation should follow, because whatever conclusion you draw, they should guide you to formulate the hypothesis for the present study. So thank you very much for participating in this session.